This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Kuf Chav.
All the learning has been generously sponsored as a schos for the new couple, Yosef ben Chana, Odalia Bracha Bas Tamar Achaya, Mirat Hashem. The learning of the entire Chabura, as we're concluding, Yevamos should bring them an incredible start to their marriage, and only bracha, tzlacha, and only amazing things.
All the learning should bring an incredible Besides Shar Chali Yisrael in the final few days of this incredible Mesechta, and we're holding on Kuf Yud Testament Bees as we begin the Gemara. The Gemara begins by quoting a Brisa, which is going to elaborate a bit on a very similar case to the Mishnah. Tana, we learned in a Brisa, Luzu Eidim Ubanim, Luzu Loi Eidim Loi Banim. If one of them has Eidim and has children, if there are children, of course, there is no Yibum, and she as well as Eidim that her husband died, Ulezu, but the other one has neither Loi Eidim Loi Banim. What's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Shteyem Mutarais. They are both allowed to marry whomever they want for the simple reason one has Eidim, and the one that has Eidim that her husband dies, so she has children, so there's no potential Yibum. The other one has no Eidim that her husband died, but she has no children, but her brother had Eidim that her husband died, so she as well is allowed to marry whomever she wants. Says the Gemara, Nisyamu, what happens if they went and the two brothers' wives did Yibum? Umeisu Yevamos, and then that one that did Yibum is Nifter. Asurim Liinasei, the halacha is they're not allowed to marry anyone else. They did Yibum, the husband died, now they can't marry anyone else. Rav Elazar Aimer says, Rav Elazar, similar to what he taught us in the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah, since you allow them to do Yibum, says Rav Elazar, it can't be. You're going to let them do Yibum. But then when that husband dies, then you can't marry anyone else. The same way they're allowed to do Yibum, they're going to be allowed to marry whoever they want subsequently. So by Rava asks 4 lines to the bottom, my time of Rav Elazar. What is the reasoning of Rav Elazar that allows the widows to remarry if the Yavam dies? Is the reason that because we really believe the eidos of one co-wife for the other co-wife? That's one reason that Rav Elazar would say. Dilmore, perhaps no. Because she would never mess herself up in order to mess up the tzara. So anytime we'll find that she herself is in the parsha, she'll have more credibility. We usually don't believe one co-wife for the other co-wife, but in the event that she herself has what to lose, then we will. So 2 sides of the coin. Is Rav Elazar arguing extreme, and he's saying that in all cases there is a believability for the tzara or not? Says the Gemara, what is the difference as we turn over to Kuf Chafam and Al today's daf? Explains the Gemara, you know the nafkamina is La'ansuve Litzara Makmi Dida. Would we allow the tzara to get married even before she herself who testified? Now the Gemara explains the 2 stadim. If you're going to tell me that Rav Elazar holds that a tzara has a credibility even for the other co-wife, then it will come out. Even if she herself never got married, who cares? Her nemanis is not based on herself. It's based that she's believed for herself and her co-wife. So once she says does the co-wife could go and get married, irrelevant if she already got married herself. So says the Gemara, but if it's the second reason, if the reason that she has a credibility and a believability and an nemanis is because she would never mess herself up, then we'd only allow the tzara to get married as long as she herself got married. Because if the whole reason she's believed is because if she's going to be involved, she'll never mess herself up. That's only if she's involved. That's only if she herself got married. So says the Gemara, what is Shitas Rav Elazar? So comes to the Gemara tries to prove from a Mishnah, Tashema, 6 lines down, Kuf Chafam and Aleph, Rav Elazar Aimer, Hoyel Voter Liavim, Hoter Lecholad. So if the whole reason is because she won't mess herself up, now I understand what Rav Elazar in the Mishnah said. The whole reason is that she has a real believability. It'll have nothing to do with the fact that they already got married. Elo shma mina, from the words of Rav Elazar. That Rav Elazar in the Mishnah honed in that since they got married themselves, therefore they have a believability. So shma mina, says the Gemara 10 lines down. Time of the Rav Elazar misham de insivu v'lo mikal nafsha. The reason is that she will not mess herself up, and it's going to come out that to only have a believability in the event that the co-wife herself already got married. But if she did not get married herself, then there would be no namanos for the other tzara. Says the Gemara, no raya. In classical Gemara response, Rav Elazar l'devreihem kamar. You try to bring me a raya from the response of Rav Elazar. Says the Gemara, no. He's responding back to the Tanakama. Lil. Lididi, Rav Elazar could hold tzara mi de l'chaverta. I believe really she has 100% emanas even for the other kohen. Even if she doesn't get married, she's allowed to. Elididchu, says Rav Elazar, according to you, oidili mios, at least admit to me, so Rav Elazar's svara, why he said that was not for his own shita, it's for what the Rabbanan themselves should admit to him, So do the Rabbanan agree with him or not? Says the Gemara, no, as far as we've seen, quoting a pasuk from Shimshon Agibar and Shaftim, Thomas Nafshi and Belishtin Udikavda. Just like Shimshon was willing to die in order to save Klal Yisrael, to pull down the whole house, to kill all the Belishtim, so too this woman at times will be willing to subject herself to mess up her co-wife. So Tashema, says the Gemara, let's try to bring another raya. A case that we've had, a woman and her spouse goes overseas and she comes back, my husband dies, she let her get married. And on this case as well, Rav Elazar argues. So what do we see? We see from over here that Rav Elazar's shita is that even if she did not go and get married, because in this case she just gave eidos, and that's enough to allow the tzara. Says the Gemara, no raya ima hayel v'otra v'nises. No, they changed the wording in the Mishnah that she actually went and got married. I asked the Gemara, asked the Gemara, why are we not concerned that maybe she had a get? And she's just saying this to mess up the tzara. Says the Gemara, you're right. But you know what the case is? And for the fact that she married a kohen is beautiful, right? Proof that certainly she was not divorced, because a kohen is not married a grusha, and that's going to be the case of that Mishnah. Continues the Gemara. Now it's a very similar topic. We've been discussing till now. We can really call it the halachas of iguna. When we allow a woman to get remarried, when do we assume the edus, the testimony, is valid with regarding to her husband dying, with regarding to her remarrying, with regarding to Yibum, etc. And now we go, what is the actual edus necessary? What level of absoluteness does one have to see that the person died in order to give such edus? So let's see the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah on the bottom half of Kochavam and Aleph, Ein me'idim ela al parts of panim. You're only allowed to give eidos on the parts of panim, on the form of the face, emachaitim with the nose. Only if you saw the dead person's face with their nose can you give eidos who that was. Even though you have simanim, you have signs in their body, you have in their garments, that's not enough. You're only allowed to give eidos when you see the person actually dying. And even if you see the person chopped up, Meguyad Vitsalov, or you see them hanging on a gallows, or what do you see? You see a chaya, a wild animal, chewing them up. You can only give edus for 3 days. Says Rav Yehuda, you're making too many rules. You can't make up such precise rules with regarding to these cases. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, explaining the first part of the Mishnah that says that you have to see the face and the nose. Says the Braisa Padachas, v'lo parts upon him. If you only saw the forehead without the whole face, parts upon him, v'lo padachas, you saw the face without the forehead, ein me'idin achishneim ima achaitem, the whole face with the forehead and the nose. Amar Abai v'tim Rav Kana Ma'ikara. Where do we see this in the pasuk? The pasuk says, "Hikaras b'neim ansuba." Hikaras b'neim, the recognition of their face, certify their identity ansubam. So we see they have to see the actual face. Abba bar Marta davi Abba bar Minyumi avi Maski beit Reish Galusa Zuzi. He would lend money he owed money to the house of Reish Galusa. I see Kira Dava Bibalaisa. Interesting story. He took some wax and he stuck the wax onto a little rag. Davak ba'paisa, and he stuck it onto his face. Chalav kamayav lo b'shakrua, and he walked in front of them and they weren't able to see him. So the Gemara is proving that when you cover over part of the face, you're able to disguise yourself. There was where we see in the Mishnah that you have to see the entire face, forehead, and nose to give eidos. Continues the Gemara, Aval bi sheish simanim. Even if there's simanim in the body, in the kelim, it's not enough. You got to see the face, forehead, with the nose. So says the Gemara. It says, harkens us back to a very famous machlokes, one in which many of us probably remember, back from the Gemara in Baba Mitzia. Says the Gemara, Lemimra. From our Mishnah, it seems the simanim lav daraisa. It sounds like if you see a siman, if you see a sign on the clothing, on the body, is that enough? It's not a large enough identifying factor, seemingly pointing in that simanim does not have a status of a din daraisa. Veramini asked the Gemara contradiction, Masu Kasher Bekes. Says in the Gemara Neil bin Siyas, if you find a get tied to a money bag, into a wallet, into a ring, or you found it amongst your kelim, afilu lizman meruba kasher. Because you have a siman. So even though you lost the get, the siman is enough. So why by us is it not enough? Amar Abaye loik shkasha Rav Elazar ben Mahavoy harabonon titanya. So my love, what is this machlekes? Whether you can give testimony about a shuma, about a mole, about a birthmark on someone's body. So maybe that's the same machlekes in our Mishnah and the Mishnah over there in Bab Mitzia, as well as the Mishnah in Gittin. Explains the Gemara 4 lines on the wide lines. Rava de Kuli Amos Simanim Derais. Amar Rava. Really, everyone knows Simanim Derais. What's the case over here? Hacha b'shuma mitzuya. What is this case of a shuma, the mole? Mitzuya b'ben giloi. It's found in a person that was born during the same celestial fields, the same time as this person. Come ifliki. Now, what's the machlokes? Marasavar shuma mitzuya ben giloi. Marasavar ein mitzuya ben giloi. Is it common for 2 people born at the same time to have the same birthmarks? And that's the machlokes if we say yes or no. Teretz number 1. Teretz number 2, Vikad Yamri, another way of learning. The shaila is, does a birthmark change after a person's death? A third way of explaining these 2 brayses, on the opposite side of a coin. Here the machlekes is, we turn over to Kafchav Mebeis. Is a shuman, is this mole unique? Is it a simon movak? You can testify based upon that alone. Marasavar simon movak, Marasavar lav simon movak. Ask the Gemara, according to the first and second terrorist, that Rava went with the thought process that simanim are a deraisa hakatani. Now we go all the way back full circle and ask from our Mishnah. What did it say in the Mishnah 3-4 lines down? Even though there are simanim on his body in these articles, it's not enough. Why not? You just told me simanim deraisa. Explains the Gemara, you know why? Because what does it mean? There's a siman on the body. It just means you're saying he's tall or short, which is not necessarily an identifying factor at all. And as well as Caleb, maybe he borrowed the Caleb, so how can you give proof to who the person is based on the jacket he's wearing? Ask the Gemara, but if you're telling me you're worried about one might borrow someone's article, Chamar b'simane uka ve'echem adrinan. One of the halachas is you find the Chamar, you find the donkey, and he has a saddle, and you could recognize the owner via the saddle. You're allowed to return it to the owner. But why? If we have to be concerned, someone might borrow someone else's item, maybe borrow someone else's saddle. Explains the Gemara, you obviously didn't go to Chamar school. Lo yishayli inshi uchba. One would never lend the saddle to his friend. Why not? Because it's going to cause the chamar, it's going to cause the donkey to have abrasions on his back because it doesn't fit him perfectly. Certain articles of clothing you don't borrow from someone else. Says the Gemara, a different case that we quoted, that if you find it tied together to a wallet, a money purse, or all these things, ask the Gemara, how can you return it based on that? Explains the Gemara, Tabas, Chayshi Lezufa, Kis V'arniki, Menachesh, Inshi, V'loi, Maishi. Excuse me, that was all part of the question. Says the Gemara, Tabas, how can you return it? So the Gemara explains that a Tabas, one would never, that's why. You're able to give edus based on the tabas. Why? Because you don't lend out your tabas, you don't lend out your signet ring. Because chayshi lezufa, someone might forge it. Similarly, veloy mushli. Similarly, kis va'arniki, menachshi, inshi, veloy mushli. People are superstitious. They don't want to lend out these articles of clothing because people feel that it's not going to bring good fortune. You lend someone your wallet, and they don't lend it. So you're able to give edus based on that because these items are not normally lent. Or maybe you're going to say that really we're not worried about borrowing. So why in the Mishnah did it say that identifying the items, the clothing the person's wearing is not enough? Because it just meant that you said the color of the clothing, and that itself is not enough. Continues the Gemara, about 12 lines down, the 2 das, even if you see the person suffering from a deadly wound, we said he's chopped up, then you're not able to testify that he died. Asks the Gemara, for the Mishnah, what does it sound like? It sounds like a Meguya, someone who's chopped up, someone who has a deadly wound, has the status of a living person. For a minute, we'll ask you a contradiction. One is not mitame, it does not transmit tama until his nefesh, till his soul leaves his body. Even if he has a deadly wound. Even if he's lying in his death throes. So ask the Gemara, what do you see? You see, he just doesn't transmit tama. It doesn't sound like he's a status of a living person. It sounds like he doesn't live. He just doesn't transmit the tama because the nefesh didn't leave his body yet. Amar Abaye loikasha Rav Shimon Rabban Elazar Harab Hana Titania Meidin ala Meguyev vein Meidin ala Tzalov. Rav Shimon Elazar Aimer Af ala Meguyev vein Meidin. Rav Shimon Elazar says a deadly wound you cannot give edus upon. Why? You know why? Because you could cauterize the wound, you could heal the person, and he still could live. So says Rav Shimon Ben Elazar, the fact that someone has a deadly wound is not enough to give edus that he's actually dead. Ask the Gemara, Mimas Lokvik Rav Shimon Elazar, is that true? They're going to tell me that we're going to Zavinia Rav Shimon Elazar for Ketani Seifa. What did the Mishnah say in the Seifa? There was a story in which someone was lowered into the ocean. Shilshul, he was lowered down into the ocean. And the only thing they found was his leg. If the leg was chopped from the knee and downward, he died. So it's clearly not like Rav Shimon Elazar, because according to Rav Shimon Elazar, what did we just see? We just saw that according to Rav Shimon Elazar, you can even heal deadly wounds. Yeah, we're seeing over here that if the limb is chopped off at a certain point, then we do assume that he has a cheskes that he's going to die. Explains the Gemara, Shaini Maya Demarzi Ma'aka, or Cheskes is going to live. Says the Gemara, this wound is different because he's in the water, and therefore the water agitates the wound, and therefore what was Rav Shimon Elazar's whole tzvara? That you could cauterize the wound, you could fix it, but if you're in the water, you're not able to do that. Says the Gemara, Rav Shimon Elazar would agree in this case, because he was lowered into the water and then his foot got chopped off, then unfortunately he has a chazaka that he's going to die. Asked the Gemara, I saw a certain Arab, the Shagol Sira Vigadya, who took a sword and chopped off the leg of Ligamle of his camel. And the camel died even before it was able to get out its full hollow, this full howl. As the camel was screaming, boom, it dropped dead. So clearly you see that there are certain wounds that you can't heal, you can't cauterize because death happens too fast. That camel was a weak camel, but a strong Gishmaka camel, you would be able to cauterize. The case is a superheated knife and it causes death much faster, and that is the reason. And we continue and we'll conclude for today's shir. Says the Gemara about 10 lines from the bottom, the two dots, that we cannot testify he's dead even if you see a wild animal eating him. It's only if the animal was eating him, not from a place that is sold of ours. But if you see the animal chopping into a place in which causes his soul to leave him, which causes death, then you could indeed give edus. If someone shechs or cuts open two or the majority of the simanim, the wind bite the trachea, ubarach me'idim, and then he runs away. What's the halacha? You're still able to testify that he's dead and the wife could get married, because it comes to a point, it's just too much. Ask the Gemara, if after someone had two of his simanim cut open, they still gave a testimony that he wants to divorce his wife. So what do we see? So we see that he obviously is the status of a living person for able to write him a get. And you just told me, no, that if two of these simanim are severed, he has a cheskas dead. Answers the Gemara, no, chayu, he's really alive. But so right now he's alive, he can write a get, but we know for sure he's going to die. Ask the Gemara, 4 lines on the bottom, if what you're saying is accurate, that this person is about to die, if he kills, if you killed him, you should have to go to Galus because it's a cheskas chai. Alama Tanya, why do we learn Shachal Shem or Rosh Shem or Izeno Goyle? If you cut two of the simanim of a person, that wasn't the question. Question is, if we're saying he's chai, but he's seifel amaves, so why if one slits the throat of another, goes and cuts open two of these simanim, is that halacha? You do not go to galus. If what you're telling me is accurate, that cutting two of the simanim, we know for sure he's going to die, to the extent that you can give testimony that his wife could get married. Seemingly someone who does that inadvertently should have to go to galus. Answers the Gemara, the reason is that we're afraid that maybe the wind contributed to the death. Maybe he himself, maybe himself, by writhing around in pain after his neck got sliced open, he contributed to his death, and there's therefore no galus for the person who murdered him because he did not affect the entire death. My now you ask the Gemara, the Shachta base the Shisha of Arches, the Nafkamina is going to be if it's in a marble home, so there's no air, so the first part doesn't apply. But in Parches, he's thrashing around, so he could have indeed hastened his death. Inami the Shachta bebar outside of Lapirches, and he didn't move around. And those are going to be the two Nafkaminas into the two Tirutzim, whether it's because he caused it to himself by moving around, or whether the air contributed to his death, and those are the two reasons why if one slices the simanim of another twice, he does not, the two simanim, he would not have to go to Gullus. We'll pick it up from Rav Yehuda on the next year.